Hello and welcome back to the IA Talks AI. My name's James King. It's my pleasure to once again be your host. Thank you for joining us again because today we have a lovely episode lined up for you. We are speaking with Karim Marchoud, the founder and CEO of Regulex. So Karim, thank you so much for coming in and joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, excellent. Well, maybe we could start by just learning a bit more about yourself. You know, you're a young entrepreneur, and you've just in the recent past started your new venture. So maybe you could tell us the story behind that. Like, what led you to where you are today?
Yeah, sure, definitely. To start off my journey at KPMG on their sponsored degree program. So we were studying computer science-based degree externally, and then we were rotating through their technology teams for the better part of 4 years. And for 3 years, I was specialized in their advanced analytics team. So deploying machine learning and data science principles to commercial and financial DD projects. And it was during that time that we worked on some really interesting solutions during COVID, like taking in non-traditional data sets like TomTom, open table booking, cinema bookings, to really get a feel for how people within economies are moving and what we can decipher off the back of that. So real big data focus. And then coming out of that, I was then headhunted into the buy-side asset management. So I was working on engagements within Schroders, M&G, Ruffer, and Phoenix. And it was during my time kind of iterating across portfolio management, engineering, and compliance that I saw the real problem with multimodal unstructured data and the amount of manual processes that were being done, especially around distribution, investment relations, and essentially the front of house where the data initially gets dropped into the organizations. So due to this frustration, I then thought, right, okay, I'm going to try and create infrastructure to address this problem. And that's when I created Regulex 1.0. And since then, I've now joined Antler in their founders residency program, which I'm now in week 6 of.
Can you tell us a bit more about that residence program? It sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, sure. So essentially, it's 80 founders in a room trying to build businesses all at the same time. You have 8 weeks, and then at the end of the 8 weeks, you're trying to get investment from the team. And essentially, during the time, you're incubating the business, speaking to as many people as you can, and trying to get business partnerships as well.
Okay, so that sounds a bit like Dragon's Den. It's a reality TV show.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're in week 6 now, but it feels like months. It's a real pressure cooker, but it's great.
Okay, good stuff. So there must be a great buzz amongst the, 80 founders or...
Yeah. They've done a really good job at getting some great people in, especially all like different disciplines as well. So it's great to obviously meet the team, but yeah, hopefully I'll leave some friends as well.
Okay, so it's not like completely cutthroat camaraderie there as well.
Well, not yet. We're not at the end yet.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, well, let's come back to Regulex. So maybe you could tell us a bit more about what it is and maybe a bit more detail about, what made you decide that you wanted to start it at this stage.
Sure, definitely. So it started from the day-to-day roles I had across the asset managers I mentioned and those manual tasks that we were doing within those teams, especially with unstructured data, reams of PDFs, Words, Excels, PowerPoint. And I thought, it'd be great if we had some form of infrastructure to try and harness this data, but then be able to inject that into the LLMs that we were using. So then the outputs would be correlated to the data that was actually in the database and sound like the kind of research that we were reading instead of hallucinations and the generic output that LLMs give. So that's what I started off with and focused it on manual workflows within distribution, investor relations, and kind of front of house teams. And since being at Antler, we're now starting to incubate a new product. So essentially, it's a agentic intelligence platform starting with distribution and wholesale teams. So essentially, the first version will be a product that ingests macro data, news feeds, portfolio holdings, fund navs, and analytics and CRM data to provide you with a morning brief and intelligence before you get to your desk, trying to understand what's happened in the world overnight, how does it affect your funds and essentially your clients, and trying to give you that intelligence straight away.
Oh, fascinating stuff. So this is currently in the developmental stage, this new platform?
Yeah, so we're developing right now. We're still trying to speak to as many people as possible just to make sure we ratify the problem and the space. And we're essentially trying to get design partnerships now just to show its real power and build it out from there.
Sure. So let's fast forward to when the platform's completely up and running. It's in the hands of your intended users. What's it going to either enable them to do that they can't do now, or is it more of they'll be able to do it more efficiently and faster? Like, tell us about the benefits that you're trying to reach for here.
Yeah, sure. So currently there are very expensive data sets that these teams buy, and they buy various versions of them. And they also have point solutions as well. So essentially what the first version will look like is collapsing and consolidating all of that data, and then have an agentic layer on top where you're able to surface all of your intelligence that you can then narrate to your clients to really understand what it is that's affecting them in the world right now and how it affects their holdings and the fund they hold, and as such, what to say to them. So that's going to help you sell more funds, but also keep redemptions down to a low degree. And then essentially in the next version, we're going to try and bring in the agentic capabilities. So before you turn up at your desk, you can have agents conducting research, generating briefs, but then populating this data within your CRM. So you don't have to keep jumping around different data sets, different products, and you can all keep it in one space.
Okay, no, it definitely sounds very exciting. Well, maybe we could just speak a bit more generally about innovation in the industry. So it'd be great to hear your perspective on how you perhaps see the industry changing over the coming years. Let's say over like a 5 to 10 year time horizon. What can you see happening?
Yeah, sure. So if we start on that distribution point, I think the distribution side will drift more away from the relationship basis, but more intelligence driven. So I think relationship managers of 2028, 2020, 2030 will care about not who do I know, but what do I know about them and why does it matter now? So you can better help them invest and better help them manage their money. I think next is the agentic AI wave, not the co-pilot wave. So essentially, I think a lot of the AI that's being used right now is augmentation. So summarizing documents, reviewing briefs, and populating Excels, for example, running data analysis. I think what will shift is this agentic wave where you start to have the agents doing more of these tasks. So before you sit down in the morning, you're having specific agents with specific access to data sets going around and completing tasks before people arrive during the day, or running autonomously during the day to conduct those tasks that you don't have time for. I think the next change will be data becomes the moat, not the product. So once firms create the infrastructure that allows their systems to talk to each other, they start to be able to harness this intelligence, and it will become democratized, meaning that you don't need large research teams to augment and generate the research that was once required of a 4 to 5 person team.
And that agentic wave, do you think, from your perspective, that the industry's ready for that now?
It's a good question. Are they ready for it? I feel like the capabilities and the technology is here. I think if we talk about are they ready for it, I think that has two sides to it. First is the cultural side, and secondly the infrastructure. So we talk about the infrastructure. Essentially, you cannot use these capabilities if you don't have your data strategy and infrastructure in place. So have you got your systems talking to each other? Have you got different layers of data moving between each other that's super tight and is also accurate? Because if you try and layer AI on top of it, it will need to equally good capabilities with good data, but it'll lead to some serious problems if it's bad data. So first you need to get your infrastructure, and then you can start layering on these capabilities. And then on the cultural side, I think the framework to think about it is it's going to accelerate your expertise, but not replace your judgment. So it will help you perform your job better, and it will give you also more time to think about second order effects.
So in that case, how do you think the skill set of people working in the industry is going to have to adjust to that new situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think essentially people will have to have a good understanding of what data is available, an understanding of the investment management landscape and the strategies and the products, but also what is the makeup of these tools. Now, you don't necessarily have to be technical and be able to code, but having an understanding of how do they work so you can use them to your advantage. I think the downfalls of that, if you don't know how they work, you might set up agents, for example, and you won't realize that they can hallucinate and drift. So I think having an understanding of the makeup of them and then of the data and the products will really help you take advantage of them.
Okay, so let's picture this. We've got this agentic wave coming towards us, but these potential breakwaters in the form of architecture on one side and then culture on the other, as you say. So what do you think needs to happen to spur the industry forward to really sort of seize and maximize the potential benefits that are ahead of us?
Yeah, I think essentially it comes from the top down. You have to have the senior leaders within your organization pushing this forward, but also at the start addressing your AI strategy. Within a lot of large enterprises, each desk and division essentially operates as its own company. It has its own budget, it has its own tools, it has its own data warehouse in some instances as well. So first, coming from the top down, addressing what the AI strategy is, like how do we intend to use AI? What are the use cases? Are we focusing first on investment research, or are we looking to operations? And then how can we roll that out across different desks, as opposed to having the siloed budgets and areas where they're all using different tools? Because essentially that leads to various generated data that doesn't have any auditability or transparency. I think that's when you get into some real messes.
Okay, so maybe switching to a slightly different topic, something that's been discussed extensively recently is this issue of data sovereignty. Be great to get your take on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think the framing has to be thought about. It's not necessarily a compliance question, but more of a strategical advantage. So it's not just where is our data stored, but it's who has access to it and how are we going to make it produce results for us year after year. Investment managers especially have access to some really powerful data, so like client behavior, fund flows, portfolio holdings. And I think right now people don't understand all of the data that they have access to. And I think if they treat data sovereignty purely as a legal question, they may wake up in 5 years and realize that their data's been commoditized by someone else. The other side of data sovereignty is on fintechs and third parties being allowed in. I think organizations need to create pathways for fintechs to get in quicker. Now, that's not lowering the security bar, but pathways can be virtual private clouds. So they exist within your four walls, or that could be synthetic environments where the data or your data holds the same statistical properties as the real data. So you can prove a product's value, or federated learning where essentially you can pull on data from disparate data sources and then means the underlying data isn't exposed and it's not centralized. So you still have that core security.
Excellent. Okay. And of course, Regulex was selected onto the IA Engine Sparks program recently. Can we hear about how that experience has been so far?
Yeah, definitely. Sparks has been great. If you're trying to build a product in this space, one of the hardest things is getting in front of people. The kind of people and decision makers you need to speak to aren't going to reply to a cold message on LinkedIn. So having those pathways to really get in front of them is really, really important. And essentially Sparks gives that to you. So you get access to, there's a panel of 30 to 40 people. And essentially they're the C-suite of the investment managers, but also kind of heads of AI, analytics and data. So you can get in front of them, you can pitch your idea, you can ratify it, maybe try and even get some proof of concepts and really get your product driving in the right direction.
Excellent. And maybe you could share with us something you've learned in the past year that you wish you knew 1 year ago, just based on all of your experience and what you've gone through launching your business from the ground up.
Yeah, sure. I think don't lead with the technology. Like really understand what is the precise problem you're trying to solve, and then be able to articulate that, and then showing the technology that you're going to be using, not the other way around. And the second point also is having a real understanding of who you're actually pitching to. The same pitch isn't going to work for everyone. Some people have more technical ability than others. And don't just presume that people aren't going to understand it because you've been looking at the same content for a few months now.
Sure. Excellent, excellent. And do you feel like you're gaining, good traction at the moment with the new venture?
Yeah, definitely. I think Spark's really slingshot it forward. Antler's really helping right now. They're two incredibly good names to have, and we're being able to get in front of some great people. We've had 2 proof of concepts already, and now we're getting quite close to some design partnerships for the new product. So yeah, there's a lot more work to do, and there's going to be some hurdles that come up. But for now, yeah, I'm happy.
Fantastic, fantastic. And what haven't I asked you that I should have asked you that we need to talk about?
It's a hard question. Maybe the UK's position in all of this.
Fantastic. Tell us about the UK's position in all of this.
I don't know, but okay, I need to think of an answer now. The UK, okay, so recently the UK has been opening up its doors to the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI really recently. I think Anthropic's just got a new office. So the ability to get those companies, those organizations, and those capabilities into the economy is great. I think culturally, there's definitely still quite a lot of skepticism regarding AI. And culturally, I think, especially in the UK, that can lead to stagnation. So I think, again, to your question earlier, how do organizations actually drive these capabilities forward is taking more risks. In America, for example, they are very focused on getting these capabilities into organizations and allowing people to fail and to break things, and for people's heads not to be on the chopping board if they get some third party in and it doesn't work out. I know the industry regarding the data is quite severe if something does go wrong, so you need those guardrails. But I think, yeah, definitely that cultural shift of allowing these capabilities to come inside organizations and testing them out.
Sure. But because you do start to hear more, especially nowadays, companies perhaps, coming away from the idea of, okay, let's just, try things out, let's experiment. And the discussion becomes more about, okay, well, what's the return on investment? Can we measure the time saving? Can we measure the efficiency gains? So are you almost suggesting that maybe that's slightly premature and we need to, embrace the discovery phase for a bit longer at least?
I think from what I've experienced and the founders I've been working with is that organizations sometimes don't necessarily know what those use cases are. They want to get these capabilities in because they want to start using them, but maybe aren't exactly sure in some cases how they work and what they're going to be used for. And I see a lot of companies falling into POC paralysis. So they get them in and then it doesn't really go into production because I don't think that the AI strategy has been set in stone. So I think that once that is figured out, there are specific use cases that apply across the whole firm. It's not just sided off to different desks and departments. Then we can better set ROIs and KPIs for these products because then we know what the expected outcome is.
Okay, no, definitely makes sense. Well, maybe we can finish with just a couple of quick questions. So, first of all, what's one area of AI that you believe is overhyped?
The co-pilot wave is completely overhyped. I think it's within most asset and wealth managers. And yeah, I'm not really a fan of Copilot. I think we need to get away from this augmentation and really start to get in the real capabilities of agentic AI and conducting those autonomous tasks.
Okay. And one area of AI that's probably underappreciated, underhyped, that could do with a bit more of a pop.
It's definitely gaining a lot of traction now, but definitely voice agents, voice AI, the ability to interact with an AI within a room, say, I think has serious capabilities, especially in this industry. And I don't think it's barely being used really.
So what does that mean? Like Alexa for investment managers?
Exactly. Something to ratify your ideas, store your assumptions, listen to your conversations. And essentially it's that aggregation of those logs and those conversations that can then help you better remember what you were talking about, tying it in with real data in real time and having something actually converse with you instead of you having to prompt it into a product.
Okay. And maybe that's going to be something you build in the future then.
Yeah, phase 2.
Phase 2. Okay. Well, I think that's a great point on which to end. So, Karim, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate your time. And thank you very much to everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Please do join us again as we'll have more episodes on the way. Thank you.